A New Mexico judge has denied Alec Baldwin's motion to dismiss an involuntary manslaughter indictment against him after the 2021 fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The actor's attorneys accused prosecutors of misconduct during the grand jury process and tried to get the case dismissed. The judge denied their claims, saying that proper procedures had been followed. Members of Baldwin's legal team tell CNN, I'm quoting now, "We look forward to our day in court," end quote. Defense attorney Misty Marris joining me right now. Misty, great to see you.
Great to see you.
So the defense claimed the prosecution presented false testimony, withheld evidence from the grand jury, and gave them improper instructions. Would that be enough, that those set of claims to get these charges dismissed?
Yeah, if it were verified, prosecutorial misconduct would be enough to overturn a grand jury proceeding. Keep in mind, though, the grand jury proceeding itself is a prosecutorial process, and that's what the judge ultimately determined in this particular case, that there was actually no misconduct. What was presented to the grand jury was proper, and that the grand jury returned with an indictment which is going to stand. So the arguments that were raised are very valid arguments. However, the judge ultimately found that they didn't have veracity in this case. Keep in mind, Frederica, judges do not want to overturn grand jury indictments. It's up to the people on that jury to make that determination. So it is a very high standard to scrap that process.
Okay. The film's armorer, Helena Gutierrez Reed, who was responsible for firearm safety, storage, on the movie set, she was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in March, and she was sentenced to 18 months in prison and is now appealing. How might that case impact Alec Baldwin's?
Well, first of all, we saw during the sentencing hearing that the judge was really not having any sympathy for Helena Gutierrez Reed, ultimately siding with the prosecution and sentencing her to 18 months. So that could signal the way the judge might rule on a sentencing if Alec Baldwin is to be found guilty. Now, before that can happen, of course, you go through the whole trial, the guilt phase of the trial. A lot of the evidence that we saw in Helena Gutierrez Reed's trial will also be relevant to Alec Baldwin. And I would expect the defense to focus very, very strongly on Helena Gutierrez Reed, the fact that she was the armor, and argue that Alec Baldwin had no reason to believe there would be a live bullet in that gun. Now, prosecutors are going to use some of that evidence and say, this set was a total disastrous mess. And we've heard that part of the argument is going to be that Alec Baldwin was often rushing through his segments, and also, putting pressure on everybody to get things done, which ultimately led to negligence. And so a lot of what we saw in that trial is absolutely going to be relevant to Alec Baldwin.
Okay. All right, let's turn to another case. This involving Sean Diddy Combs, who's facing yet another sexual assault lawsuit. It's the second this week and the seventh since November that directly accuses him of sexual assault. People were aghast when they saw the surveillance video that CNN exclusively obtained and was released for all to see, showing him, kicking and beating Cassie Ventura. Do you see a connection that will be made of seeing that kind of video and now other allegations involving other people?
So the video itself is so horrifying to watch. It's really, really difficult to watch. And it was actually rang very true to the allegations that were raised by Cassie in her lawsuit, which was ultimately settled. But keep in mind, now that that video is public, it verified some of what she said in her complaint. And although her case is settled, many of the other allegations in the other lawsuits also stem from domestic violence and violent type acts. So certainly that video would ultimately be used to show a pattern of conduct that could ultimately come in to any of these civil trials, or ultimately be a part of any further federal investigation, which we know his homes were raided by Homeland Security. So the video itself is not actionable because the statute of limitations is over. However, it will certainly be relevant to the to these other cases.
And then what about Combs's, I guess on Instagram, it was an apology or an acknowledgement. I mean, see it however you'd like to. There it was. How might that play a role? Might there be, an admission, or attorneys saying there was an admission here, or draw some similarities to other allegations?
I actually thought that video was a disaster. I'm sure that any lawyer would say don't do it. It's likely that that was something more for PR, but to me, it fell flat. And here's the legal risk. As you said, number one, it's an admission of that type of conduct. But his feet were to the fire, right? It's on video. We all watched it with our own eyes. Keep in mind, when Cassie filed her lawsuit, he said, everything in this lawsuit is fabricated. This is a total money grab. Well, wow, his credibility is certainly in question now that he's come out and made this public statement about how he has tried to correct this type of behavior in the past. So yes, Fred, this is going to be something that not only impugns his credibility, but also could potentially come into play in any of these lawsuits where you see similar types of allegations. It comes in as what's called a prior bad act and shows a pattern of conduct.
All right, Misty Marris, thank you so much. Good to see you. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there is help. Visit thehotline.org or call 1-800-799-SAFE.